morning,
morning.
everyone. Yeah, good morning.
Good
Hey,
morning, Roman. Good morning, Kathy.
I have
morning.
my sad face.
Hey, this morning we're talking about how do dogs grieve and what you can do to help them. And this is a subject that I've really been pretty involved with for quite some time because I like that the crossing over Rainbow Bridge show and people understand that dogs will grieve not only other furry animals, but they grieve their owners as well when they're. So today we're going to talk about that. And the question here that we have for you is, do you believe if dogs mourn? And if you do, then stay tuned to this show for sure. And one of the people that I really like, and Roman, I know you've referenced him before, is Dr. Stanley Cohen. He's a psychologist, and he also is a professor of psychology at the University of British Columbia. He
Good
talks.
people.
Yes, yeah, he does, and he's written quite a number of books. If you've never gotten any of his books, they're really good, and they're all about dog behavior. One of the things that he says about dogs is that if you look at the behavior of your dog, that's a sure tale, a sure sign of being able to identify if your dog is mourning or not. Not all dogs will mourn. Not all of them will. But I thought, if you don't mind, I got a little video that was on Facebook, one of our friends that we really like. And if you don't mind, can we show that? Or let's talk about, what is your opinion? Do you think dogs grieve?
Yes,
Roman?
yes,
Yeah?
like unquestionable. All mammals are grieving. Whales, penguins, you name it, right?
Elephant.
Even bees. I wrote an article the other day that bees also have a sense if somebody passes and doesn't come back again.
Hi, Sebastian.
Hi,
Hi, Sebastian.
Sebastian.
Be well, please.
Yeah.
I hope it's not in Celsius.
Triplets. Yeah.
Okay, about dog and grieving. My wife, cousin, she owned two dogs, and one passed away. And they were, I think, brother and sister, I think. And one passed away, and the second, the one who survived, has a long period of grief, and where it's looking for his companion, partner, friend in the house all day. Even if she brought two more dogs in to replace the one that passed away, the elder dog is still looking for the partner after months. That's a little anecdote I kind of witnessed there.
Okay.
Well, it's a subject of, is the dog grieving, and in the case of my wife cousin, she her dog, the surviving dog, was looking for her the companion.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I've got my mind over here because I want to show this. I want to
Okay,
show
show
this.
the video.
Yeah. Show this. This is Rocky Kanaka. If some of you have not heard of him, he's really a great guy. He goes to different shelters and he helps to adopt the dogs from the shelter. But this is about an unlikely companion, because dogs can grieve about any of the companions that they have, whether human or furry. So let me make sure that you guys can hear this.
Not killing that rabbit. Beagles apparently are bred to hunt bunnies specifically. This was a rare, unique friendship. When Rue and Chloe first met, they immediately were both drawn to each other. You know, they would always sleep in with us. We'd bring Rue down and she would immediately just go right under the covers with Chloe. Chloe would be like walking and Rue would just be like walking under her. So you could tell that she felt safe around Chloe. Rue, she was only 2 years old, but she got sick unexpectedly. The vets let us take her home, and I'm not kidding. The second we got home, she passed away right next to Chloe. Then there came to a point where we saw how Chloe was just missing something. She'd go to Rue's room, she wouldn't understand. We're like, okay, you know, we should probably start trying to open our hearts again, even though it's hard.
Megan and her boyfriend spent months trying to find the perfect companion for Chloe, and miraculously came across the kitten, Clea.
Clea was just in an accidental litter in our neighborhood, and we decided to take Clea in. She was way too young to be like separated from her mom and her litter. When we brought her home, she was scared of Chloe and kind of scared what was going on, but within 2 days, she kind of like adopted Chloe as her mom.
Now, these two are inseparable and continue their message about kindness despite your differences.
You can be kind to those who are different than you. And I think especially Chloe is just the prime example of that, because she just accepts anyone. And with Chloe and Ruth, their friendship will be so unique. Clea, she brings a whole different energy to this friendship and this house. The message still remains. Clea's fit into our lives so perfectly that I'm like, there's no way that Rue didn't send you. I've just looked at her and been like, oh, that looks familiar. When Clea's mad, she'll like flick her feet, and when bunnies are mad, they flick their feet, which cats don't normally do that. Clea always sleeps with her two back legs like all stretched out, so you can just see her feet, and that's how Rue slept too. And I'm like, okay, everyone has a super heavy heart about Rue, but they absolutely love Clea. And I think part of it is, you know, we get comments all the time. It's like reinvented her, like that's Rue reincarnated. So I think people love to think about that idea and hold on to that idea.
Share this story if you love it as much as I do. Hit that follow button if you love animals as much as I do. And hit that join button if you want to be a part of my animal loving community.
Wasn't that great?
Yep. Excellent.
Okay, now we're going to start with the discussion. Roman, Roman, that's heartbreaking. Yeah, it sure is, Sebastian. Roman, your feelings about do dogs grieve? What are some of the signs? Because there's a site that I went to before, and I'm going to put the link in the description or in the comments here now. So if you guys want to follow along, you're welcome to. And this is a veterinarian hospital, and they say, do dogs mourn? So we're going to go through these different things, and do they mourn? Do they have emotions and that? So Roman, do dogs have emotions? Do they mourn?
Well, of course. First of all, dogs are not pack animals. Dogs are social animals. So building relationships, it's a very important part of the way they work and work closely with their environment. And so we see that dogs create different types of relationships. And we need to be aware of those types of relationships, because this will in end show up how the dog will mourn about a loss of his friend, partner, or relationship. So do all dogs mourn the same way if one of the partners are lost? No, because it depends on their attachment relationship or how the relationship was. You know, we need to see the dogs coming into a home. They are not always voluntary relationships. We want to adopt a dog because we want the dog to be partner with our dog. And so we create a forced relationship. If that get involved is one thing, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they just live with each other because they're fine, but they're not going out for a bar or something like that. They're really just contained and just, do the everyday thing. So dogs may bond more with people than with their partners. So from that aspect, since dogs are emotionally intelligent and they're empathetic, and these build those type of relationships, some dogs go into more extreme attachment relationship where there's a codependent relationship where the one dog is following the other dog. Now, if the dog who is being followed dies, then the other dog who was in a codependent relationship, of course, is going to fall off the clouds because suddenly he has no instructions, no information. He has nobody to rely on. And usually these type of relationships are weird because dogs do not bond with people. They bond with the dog partner. And then if that dog partner leaves, then they're totally alone and actually start being scared and reactive and show different behaviors. We're going to talk about a little bit later. But the answer is yes, dogs are very emotionally intelligent, and they do go through this complete emotional state just like children do. So I would say, as much as a 5-year-old can go through mourning, losing his partner, his brother, his friend, or his house, dogs go through mourning as well. And it's not only about dogs or losing a partner. Also, the dog can mourn about being in an environment, like mourning around losing his house or his his place or his work. So this concept of loss, let's call it this way, very simple, is comes in with different angles. So we need to be aware of that.
That's a really good point. When I think about it now, I've moved so many times with Charlie. Every time I move, he always likes to put his stash underneath the bed. It's like he panics and he puts all his stuff into one area. It's like, you can't take this away. You're not going to get this. This is mine. So they sense when you're going to move, and they sense when their home is
Yeah.
going. And it's like following me around all the time. He becomes very Velcro
Yeah.
during that time. And if somebody comes in and moves the bed or moves the area that he's used to having, it's very traumatic. Very traumatic. So that's an excellent point, Roman. Excellent. Well, one thing in this article, it says, when a member of that family unit is gone, there is a huge void in the dog's life, and he may need help in dealing with the loss. So that's what we're talking about today. Now, there are some statistics I think that are important to share, and that is 30% of dogs experienced a decreased appetite following the loss of a canine companion. Let's talk on that, Roman.
Well, we need to see that their dogs, in order for them to be social organized, they do have, let's call it, rules, and they have also rituals. So the dogs exchanging information, even if they're not talking to each other, giving the other dog, granting access to food or granting access to space, it's part of social interactions. So if the other dog doesn't give the other dog a cue to eat, like, okay, let's eat, let's sit for dinner, and that information is missing, the dog doesn't have permission to eat, kind of, sort of. And so it's very tricky. And as guardians, we need to always pay attention. What is the conversation these two have with each other when they're working or feeding or playing or interacting with you as a person? How much the other dog is interfering in that relationship and these actions? Simply look like that towards the other dog gives him or gives not permission to do certain things. And if this information is missing, then we need to step in and give the dog permission to eat. Makes
What,
sense?
Gaetan?
Hello.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
did you
we're
say?
here.
Well, I'm lost. I lost my connection with the internet. I reconnect, and now I try to come back.
Yeah, you're in. You're in
I'm
the.
in. Okay,
Yeah,
but
you're
I
in.
don't see you. I don't see my screen.
Uh-oh.
I hear you now.
Okay. Well,
Let's
Aw,
figure out what's
all
going on
right.
here.
I'll remove you and then I'll add you back in. Can you see
Okay.
now? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to say on that, Roman, is let's do a correlation between a dog and humans. I know myself, when my husband passed away, the thought of eating, oh gosh, I don't want to do that. And usually after someone passes away, you have a ritual and you have people over and you want to celebrate the life and all that, but nobody wants to sit and eat. So the same thing that a human would feel, a dog can feel too. So it just makes sense that they don't want to eat.
Yeah. And it comes not only between dogs, also dogs have grief who are being rehomed, right? Or lose a human partner or a divorce. So we're going through the same process like children would do. So if we talk about dogs and grieving, we need to think a 5-year-old, what can the 5-year-old feel through the process of separation and loss? And these things come very, very intense sometimes.
Okay, it says here now, the next thing is Many dogs sleep more than usual, while some suffered insomnia.
Well, there are the different types of behaviors that are related to that. The first one that I see very often is a change of habits. Dogs are confused. There are interrupted rituals in place, and dogs get confused. It can start with simple depression, or the dog is not eating. They're losing weight. All these things are happening at the same time, and sometimes they're insecure. Sometimes they start barking. Sometimes they start being aggressive. Sometimes they're if the combination is weird, that you took the dog away to bring him to the vet and then you came back without the dog, there is already a wrong concept, because we need to see that a dog's thoughts creates emotions and emotion creates the behavior. So if the dog thinks that you're leaving and you're never coming back, just like his friend never got back, you're going to definitely trigger separation anxiety. And personal experience, I just like last year, we had to let go of my 16-year-old, our 16-year-old dog, and our female that grew up together for 8 years. She was miserable for a very long time. She didn't eat for a month, and she's barely recovering. It's almost a year, going through this process. And she always checks in on him. Like, sometimes I see her, usually she shifts bed overnight, and she paces around because in her mind she wants to go lay down with him, and he's missing. And so she wants to go to the bigger dog, and the bigger dog is like, "Leave me alone, lady." And she's like, she gets frustrated, So these old habits that are in place are difficult to change, especially if those relationships are very intense. And looking into what type of relationships we have, especially if those relationships are healing relationships or, survival relationships, it can be more intense than that. I have seen dogs dying because of the loss of the other dog with no really health issues. It just passed out.
Okay, so the next area is some dogs change the area of the house where they slept. So if you have a dog that had passed away, possibly they may go over to the area where the dog where the other companion or furry companion or the owner had slept, or they may choose a new area to sleep. Wonder why there's that kind of personality.
Well, I just explained before an example with my female, where she was looking to lay in bed with her partner because that's what she always do. I would think that's more of a habit. However, there's a spiritual aspect to that. And I know from let's call it tradition, I got the word, from tradition, that dogs have a certain period of time that are in an in-between space. Let's not go too deep into that, but sometimes they appear. So that after appearance, after they pass, they may appear. So I have different occasions with several dogs in the past that I've lost. I worked with about 400 adopters, 400 rescues that I worked in the past, and I have like 10, 15 dogs that I had in person. And I've seen that some particular dogs show up once in a while. And it's not just my illusion. I mean, literally our dogs are getting up and going to the window, wagging their tail, waiting for what at the same time. And then everybody's looking at each other like, oh, he's gone. And then everybody turns back and goes back to bed. And I know, because I know the date, it was anniversary. That's not accidentally. And it's not my illusion because the dogs woke me up. I didn't wake up the dogs, So I've seen these kind of things. And I remember a couple of occasions where my 3-legged dog showed up and kind of like start instigating my other dog to be played with. And my dog starts literally interacting with an invisible dog. And I was like, what is going on with him? What is he doing? Like, oh, you're playing. Oh, okay, I got you. Hi, Ziggy. And I know some people will turn their eyes backward like, yeah, whatever. It's anyone's thing. We know from tradition, in time past, if we look back in the ancients, people were putting themselves with the dogs in the same grave. Like, let it sink for a little bit. Why would you do that? Not cows, not cats, sometimes cats, but usually dogs, because there's specific energy behind that. There's a spiritual connection with it. We cannot just ignore it, right? And right. I mean, we cannot prove it technically, but energetically, as an empath and as a healer, I can tap into those fields and I know it exists. So, but that's my personal opinion, and nobody has to adopt it, right?
Well, Gaetan just brought up a good point about we should talk about a specific, let's say a dog loses its owner. A true story happened here in Las Cruces. By the time the ACO, an owner had died, and by the time the ACOs got into the house, the animal control officers got into the house, they found the dog sitting on the lap of the person that passed away. Now, this person had had this dog his entire life, and the dog was just sitting there and just crying. So when they saw the other humans, this dog was usually very, very active, but this dog was not acting in the same way that he always was. He was crying, clawing, and wanting to protect his owner. And I guess it broke the heart of the animal control officers, because they saw that this dog truly was grieving and somehow miraculously was hoping through the vocalization to try and wake him up.
This is a good point. I want to pick up on a little bit. Dogs do have hope. Okay?
Yeah.
They hope that you let go of the treat. They hope that you wake up in the morning. They hope that you come back again if you're not there again that we think you are. And dogs can feel energy changes. We know that for sure. And dogs, because they have this ability to see different frequency, they can see eventually you leaving on the body, and they're concerned about it not being there. So dogs do have a sense if somebody's alive or dead, because otherwise they wouldn't be predators.
Right, right. Well, actually, this goes right in line with what the next area was. About 63% of dogs exhibited changes in their vocal patterns, with some vocalizing more, while others were quieter than they were prior to their loss of the human or furry companion. So we've really, that's it. And surviving dogs were often more affectionate with their owners and became clingy after another furry animal, or if somebody in the family had passed away, because they know that there's a loss there. And that kind of goes to what you're talking about, Roman. If another person in the family leaves, does the dog live in hope that that person is going to come back? And then is there a time when they realize that person is never going to come back?
Well, that's the part of separation anxiety. If one event happens that a person leaves and then never comes back, the dog is afraid. And I've seen a story in person from a dog in Greece where I used to live. There was a bad weather coming in, and people had to leave their boat because they didn't want to get caught in the storm, because definitely the boat will be destroyed. And there were foreigners from Germany back then. And so they had to leave. Unfortunately, the dog got off the boat and they couldn't find him. They was waiting there for a day, but they had to leave. So they let the dog behind, hoping to come back again later and pick the dog up by plane. But in that meantime, the dog was sitting on the edge of the cliffs waiting for them to come back.
Yeah, right.
Not at the harbor, at the cliffs.
Hey, Gaetan.
Where they can see them coming. Yes.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask you now, listening to all of this, can you see how the behavior of an animal or of a dog relates to a human? And how a human would react when they would lose someone in the family? You know, you wake up in the morning, and I know myself, when my husband passed away, when I wake up in the morning, I was so anxious to be able to talk to him. When any dogs died, actually, sometimes they say that it's harder to lose a dog than it is a human, because you can prepare and you can say goodbye and everything else, but you can't do that. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, in the last point you just brought, there's a saying in French, say, son chien est mort. And this is an expression meaning a guy was very sad and very distraught, very, and nothing will take him out of that. We say his dog is dead. And when somebody lost a dog, and I have my sister owned dog since she's married. She has dog entire life. And one of her dog died, and she was like, ugh. She was in a state of mourning. The reverse, I have an anecdote to share with the reverse. And it's not from me. It's a historical event which has been recorded. There's a zoologist in Africa. We were studying elephant. And he was studying elephant for about 20, 25 years. And he was studying the same herd of elephant in the same area of the country, of the continent, for many, many years. And he passed away in a village. And all and behold, the elephant came out of the jungle, walked into the village, find his house, and every elephant of the herd passed in front of his house. So that's an example of animal having a mourning feeling.
Yeah,
And it's true
rituals.
for dogs, and it's true for many other animals, like Roman was saying at the beginning. And the question I have for Roman and Kathy, what do you do when you have a dog which is mourning and he has no way to go, and what you do?
Well, I want to say that what we're going to do now, that was perfect timing, and you didn't even know this was coming up, Gaetan. We're going to go through some of the 7 areas.
I read your mind.
Oh, okay, some of the 7 areas that will actually, I'll put up the topic and then we can discuss it. So the first one is spend extra time with your dog. Okay, Roman, you're on.
Well, I would say we need to compensate for the loss, and I would say, yeah, correct. We should spend extra time for the dog, but we cannot expect the dog to shift like this. So we have to hold space for the dog. At the same time, we need to be aware that we are going through a grief process too. So dog is also copying our grief process. Even if a dog doesn't really take into that, you feeling grief will attract the dog to feel the same way, because dogs have this ability to kind of tune in into our emotional state and kind of synchronize with it. So I would say the first thing that I would do is really going through the grieving process. And some people take it harder, some people less. In that case, if you're struggling with it, you should consult a professional to help you through this process, right? So don't take it very light on that. So then you can help also your dog, holding space for your dog, walking through the process, having interactions with him. Keep schedule as usual. Just add more dedication to it, helping the dog with the transition. Later you can go back to the regular routines, but for now, give the dog that outlet. Like, hey, let's go for an extra walk today. How about we go meet the ducks,
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Okay, so the next section is be more affectionate.
Well, of course, dogs go through a process of feeling the needs of support, and so we have to give them that support. I would say we shouldn't assume or project our need onto the dog's needs. Because sometimes the dogs just leave me alone. So just because we said that it's good to kind of give a little bit more attention to the dog doesn't mean you have to force your dog to sit on your lap and pet him all day long, because that's how you feel. So we need to be very aware of and taking consent. Consent is a very important piece, especially through that particular time of grief.
Okay, number 3. If your dog enjoys company, invite friends over who will interact with your dog. And I assume that that's so that trying to get the dog to be playful and bring them back into the normal routine. When is this appropriate, Roman?
I feel we have as culture, and in different cultures. I mean, I've been in many cultures before, but I see there's one pattern of grieving process is externalizing your emotions. Talk about it, express yourself. So why not bring your friends over and says, hey guys, let's talk about how fun Ziggy was when he was here. How about you tell everybody his story? And everybody's going through the process, and we create that momentum dynamic. And very important is we have to let go of that dog in our mind, especially if there's another dog left behind. And that void that you talked before, it's not something you have to fill in. You have to just become aware of it. The awareness is what creates the good juice to fill it up, not your choice to fill it up. You cannot just fill it up, that void, with interactions and dog walks and pet sitting and all these things, because it's just violent happening, and you're not going through a grief process. You have to come up with your emotions as well as the dog. And why not being more social, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
again, it comes everything with a grain of salt. Don't take it literally. Just because your dog is passing, you have to run a party or something like that if the dog is an introvert.
Okay. Number 4 is provide entertainment while you're gone. Now, this to me is a little bit different than what you're talking about with separation anxiety, because you try and do things that you think there may be an area where I would think that if you leave and nobody is home, the dog really is feeling bad because now they don't have the companion or the fur. So
I would say the better word, instead of entertainment, I would say enrichment. Enrichment is a broad experience, from emotional, psychological, nutritional, exercise part, location-wise. There's a lot of things that fill in. There's a whole interview around that to talk about it. We have enough studies in place and have already defined what enrichment is. So from simple food enrichment to exercise changes, to adding simple things like enrichment toys that are interactive, not passive, just laying around and hoping the dog gets interactive with it. Don't throw your dog a lot of puzzles if he has no clue how to do them. Sometimes you have to literally interact with your dog physically and show him how to turn that switch to the treat to pop out, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And also exercise is enrichment, and social engagement is enrichment, and even changing the sheets of the dog sheets once in a while is a good enrichment. And I wouldn't say change the space of that dog, but yeah, changing his bandana to different, bandanas, like purples and yellows and greens, like go with the leaves, kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah. Number 5 is reinforce good behavior and ignore inappropriate behavior. Now, this is not that if the dog poops in the house, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But this is that the dog may, in fact, have some different behavior that you're trying to bring him out of, and you're trying. It's like, oh, come on, cheer up, let's go out, let's do this. You see somebody that's grieving, that has just lost, equating to a human that has just lost someone. You can't expect them to change their behavior because you want them to.
I think the operant conditioning can be a slippery slope, especially in that time of grief. Yes, dogs go through a change. They have to go slowly. They have to think through a process. They have to process a new change. I'm not coming from an angle that says all dogs don't learn new tricks. Of course they do. They're very adaptable. But it takes time, and we cannot force it. So trying to reinforce a certain behavior and pushing your needs onto the dog is not going to make anything better. It's just a temporary solution. It's not long lasting. What we want the dog is really to go through a process of healing and not conditioning. Okay.
Right.
I cannot be conditioned to not miss my wife because I've been flooded with videos and movies and parties. I still miss her. It's an emotional state.
Of course.
You cannot condition emotions, but what you can do is you can change the thought about things.
That's right.
And so we have to be very careful about that. So the idea of going that route is okay, but again, we should more likely tune in, and the dog will tell you what he needs to be done, and we have to just tune in into that and be open-minded and let it sink in. And if we have problems with suddenly changes of behaviors like aggression, resource guarding, I've seen dogs changing to aggression because one of the partners left, and I'm not saying they blame somebody else, but they were afraid. Just because people came up and pick up the person, the 911 came, or the emergency, how you call these people, the first responders, the dog starts becoming aggressive and he doesn't want anybody come to the house. So you need to search professional help as early as possible, because you don't want that to become a permanent condition.
And what you're saying is that are we trying to change the focus of the dog from is grieving to new activity or new discovery or new experience?
Well, of course, if we let things just flow on their own, it kind of can sink too. So we need to keep up with motivation. So usually the motivation is what the problem is. If you don't have enough motivation, the dog will kind of sink in a little bit. But motivation comes in kind of sweet, so we have to be very careful. We cannot force it.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, and let me see here. So the next one is think carefully about replacing your dog. Because many people say, oh, the best thing for you to do is go out and get another dog. And some people will say, gee, I'm really not ready. So maybe fostering a dog is a great option if you're not ready to bring a new dog into the home, or volunteer at a shelter might be a way to go. But personally, myself, I've experienced that. Funny thing is, what I would do is I would, after my 18-year-old dog died, I went to the shelter and I fostered a dog. And I then fostered another one and then another one. And it was the third one that finally had went under the bed and got some of Maggie's stuff and brought it over and played with her in this, played with her stuff the same way that she did. And for some reason, I felt this is the dog that I know was sent by Maggie. But that's just my way of thinking. But if there was certain characteristics, how would this dog have known where to go and how to do it? And there, so that's my way.
It's a nice way.
Yeah. So what do you think, Roman?
I feel, again, as people, we need to grieve as well. And I think we shouldn't rush it. I feel very often people are going through the process of not going through the grieving process, which is a big thing. Some people have traumatic experiences losing a person, and then that dog becomes kind of like an extension of that experience. And so we shouldn't take it lightly. From my personal experience working with people over the years is I've seen people who rush to get a new dog. The new dog had no place in that house because their heart wasn't ready to let that dog in. There was always the comparison. Oh, he's not behaving like my old dog. Oh, he's not doing that like my old dog. It's
Right,
kind of
yeah.
like getting
Like a new
married and
boyfriend.
talking about your
Yeah.
like, come on, give me a break.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And
I met somebody who did exactly that. She owned a dog of a given breed, and the dog passed away after like 16 or 17 years. And the next day, she bought a dog the same breed, same color, same shape.
and
And then,
expected the same thing.
well, it did not behave the same way. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And the last area, and then we're going to end the show, is you should consider holistic therapy and healing. Now, the reason I put this in here is because many times you will hear, well, let's put your dog on a tranquilizer or some kind of medication. There are other alternatives. And I know, Roman, this is in your heart. So you go ahead and speak on that.
Exactly.
But that's what his
Exactly.
whole his whole life
Exactly.
is about. Yeah, right.
It is exactly that.
It's kind
Yeah.
of like, let the priest talk about himself. No, it's not. I don't think. I think you guys should talk about it. I feel, seeing, that process from a holistic perspective, we need to see that dogs going through grief need emotional support, need nutritional support, need eventually sometimes supplements to overcome, their stress, because there's a lot of energetic changes going on. And at the same time, we need to see it also from an energetic perspective. If we have a dog leaving our house, there is an energetic deficit and it needs to be covered. In the meantime, there's shifting, systemic shifting happening, and we need to kind of become aware of what's going on, especially if we have multiple dogs. Like people who have just 2 dogs, things are simple. People who have 4 and 5 dogs, things can change dramatically when change is dynamic, especially. And I know people will say, yeah, my alpha dog died and now there's nobody there to control them. It's not exactly like it happens. Sometimes a dog is there to keep the status quo or keep the balance. And if that dog who keeps the balance is gone, I was wondering, why is your dog had to do that job? Where is your parenting skills coming in? And I think we should kind of be aware and look into that aspect and say, hey, my group changed. We have a missing piece here. I need to cover that gap as a parent until everything is sorted out. And you just have to keep an eye on. And sometimes it can be very complicated, especially if you have big dogs.
Yeah.
They can get serious fights in there because there is no, how you call it, mediator in between kind of organizing things or interrupting things. And things can
Right.
escalate quickly.
Right.
And so from a holistic perspective, I would say both. If I work with people, even online, I work with both the people and the dogs at the same time. And sometimes I have already recommended, and I can tell you a short story if we have time, about, if it's okay. It's okay?
Sure.
Short
Yeah,
story. So the story happened in Greenwich, Connecticut. It was in 2011, I think. So I was called in because a dog was severely depressed, right? To the point that she was worried he's gonna die. So I came to the house and I was looking at it, and I saw a dog wagging his tail, and I was like, "Which dog are we talking about?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"This dog." And I was like, "Man, is she blind?"
Yeah.
The dog was wagging his tail, like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "Let's play around." He's bringing me his toys, and like, okay. But it was a very intense experience to hear how it goes. So I came to the house and everything was fine, no problem at all. And I was wondering, why exactly am I here? I don't see a dog suffering of anything. He's just fine with everyone.
Yeah.
And so I had these intuitive things. I was like, let's ask the dog about the story. Like, what's going on here? And the dog turned his head. I was like, what is he looking at? And he looked there. There was a chimney, fireplace. And on top of the fireplace, there were pictures on it. And I was like, is he looking at the pictures? And I was like, what is going on? So he walked away from me, went to the chimney, looked up, and came back to me.
Wow.
I was wowed too. I was like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
So I asked her, what's up with those pictures? Oh, that's my son. Okay. So what is the relationship with the dog with your son? Well, that was my son's dog. Like, what happened? Did you adopt him? I said, no, my son died a couple of months ago.
Mm.
Oh, okay. So that dog came to me to tell me that it's not about the dog, but it's about the sun that is up there in the chimney. And then I would say, like, okay, so what should I do? And then the dog turned to her, like, looked to her. Literally, that freaking dog was talking to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you want me to talk with her? And he's like, and he actually come up to his back legs. And you know how those little dogs do like this? And he's like, yeah, do that. And I was like, okay. So I was like, tell me the story. What happened?
Tell
to
me
your
about
son,
your
right?
son. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I said, you know what? I cannot help you with that. I think you need to see a therapist because I can help you with the dog, and the dog is fine. But I think you need to kind of come to that experience.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can help you with. You literally need to work with somebody who can help you. And so I recommended a friend of mine who is a therapist, and she was just fine. That was the first and last time I saw her. Maybe she didn't like me anymore. But it was that amazing piece. The dog picked up on what's going on and actually gave me the solution, what to do and how to help.
Wow.
So we need to be open-minded on stuff. So speaking
Right.
of holistic, open up your mind and be open to perceive the information. It's there available for you as a person,
And
as
get
a
therapy
professional.
for yourself too, not just for your dog.
Yeah.
Because
But
it
you
goes
cannot
hand in
expect
hand.
somebody who's in grief to think logic through a process because
Right.
it is a lot of pain, getting a loss. And I know people says, losing a dog is 7 times harder. No, you cannot compare with numbers.
Right.
Some people
That's true.
suffering, they lose a piece of their personality, of their heart. It's kind of like soulmate kind of got lost. It's a lot of suffering. I mean, I remember my dogs. I went to my knees and I think I couldn't get up for an hour or two.
Yeah. Well, you know what I do, which is more of a spiritual thing. With my husband, I imagine that the hole that was in his heart, in my heart, because he's gone, I now reach out and I go into my meditation and I bring him back into my heart to fill that hole.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with my dogs too. So that way I can always feel that he's residing inside of me and that she's residing inside of me. So my heart is complete.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my way. So thanks everyone for
Thank
watching the show. And we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time. We will see you soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Sorry for your loss.
Truly.
Sorry.